This video is brought to you by KEH.com. Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. I have a few hours this morning to take some photos, and I think you know what that means. Lately in the channel, that means the project that I've been working on for over 3 years, which is my rural decay or rural architecture project, or what I've been lately lovingly referring to my rural porchscapes project, which may not sound very interesting to some of you, but to me has been reinvigorating for my photography, and something I just get so excited to do every time I pull out the camera and have a few hours to make my way to small town America. And along with that, I do have a side quest though. I have a side purpose for this particular video, and it's a test. It's a selfish one. It's one that will help me determine what lenses I want to use going forward. But I think a lot of you are probably here for the same reason, and that is to answer the question, is it possible to use more affordable glass or lenses on the GFX system and without too much sacrifice of image quality, or hopefully none at all? That's what I want to answer. It's been a long time since I've been able to answer that. A lot of that's been just due to expediency, lack of funds. I've really only had one lens since I've had this GFX 50R in my possession. That lens is the 80mm 2.8 Mamiya Secor lens for the Mamiya 645 system, of course. And this little 80mm lens has been my BFF. It's been on my 50R almost always. So I've loved it. It's a good focal length for what I do. It's not so narrow that I can't get most architectural subjects in the frame in a rural setting. Usually I'm constrained by the street behind me, of course, any private property or business behind me. So I'm across the street usually, or somewhere in between, and this lens gets pretty much everything in focus, but with also not sacrificing that compression that I'm after, a little bit of telephoto range. So this lens really it hits the sweet spot. But if I could have more telephoto length, I would prefer it. I would prefer more compression, more of what a telephoto lens can provide on a medium format camera, and just a little bit more flexibility would have helped me in many situations. So as you know, I've had a windfall of cash recently because we had a bit of a Fuji X system purge. We went down to just the bare essentials for Fuji X, and that means that I have a little bit of freed up equity to work with for some lens purchases. So rather than just jumping straight into, really expensive GFX lens territory, I want to know if I can continue investing more in the Mamiya 645 system and not sacrifice quality. So to that end, I went to KEH, which they are a sponsor of this video, yes, but I would go there anyway. As you guys know, those that follow the channel, you know that that's the first place I go to look for used lenses, which I'm almost always trying to find good used lenses before I buy new. And it's the first place I go to sell my gear. Again, as you know, that Fuji X purge, or I guess selling off that we recently did, most of that is in KEH's hands now. And we appreciate their partnership, and I definitely recommend you guys use them or look at using them for buying or selling of used gear. They're great people to work with. They even will do a Zoom call with you to help assess the value of your gear before you send off those treasures to get some sort of estimate. So anyway, looking at using KH, that is who I used for these. I got 2 more lenses. This is the 100mm f2.8. You can see it's much smaller than the GFX equivalent. There's a lot of reasons for that, of course. We'll come back to that. And then the 55-100 f4.5N zoom lens. So these are 2 lenses that I saw in KEH. All told, the cost for these 3 lenses, each one was about between $140 and $150 each, I believe. Let me verify that. Yep, every single one was between $140 and $150. So for you know, $450, I was able to get the range I need for the type of work I do. I don't really need wider or more tele. This is the sweet spot for me. And the equivalent, if I were to go out and get 3 lenses in GFX land, I would spend over or around $7,000, of course. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm not telling you that it's equivalent at all. Of course it's not. I mean, these lenses have autofocus, and that in and of itself is a deal breaker for many of you. Having a manual focus, that's probably not going to work for many of you. Additionally, you'll get, not all of GFX lenses are weather sealed, I don't believe, but even without weather sealing, there's still fewer cracks and orifices and tolerances than you will have with something like this, where you have to adapt. So, you know, if dust or weather is a concern for you, you know, you're probably better off with something like this. There's also other things like Fuji will provide optical enhancements, I guess, or computational type work when they know it's a Fuji lens attached that you won't have with these. That's some people will not think that's a benefit, but that's there. So there's a lot of reasons why this isn't going to work. The Mamiya 4.5 system isn't going to work for a lot of you. But for those of you like me who manual focus anyway, don't need autofocus, who are on a budget, which is such a big reason, we want to know if image quality can compete. So that's the purpose of this video. So I've got the GFX 45-100 f4 lens that covers the focal lengths of these Mamiya lenses, and I'm going to be comparing quality back and forth. Now, yeah, I don't have primes of equivalent focal length, and that would probably be ideal in a truly scientific test. But again, this is a selfish review. If I wasn't using Mamiya, I would start out with just this lens and probably this would be my lens. That would be the only lens I would need for the type of the project that I'm doing, at least right now. And so for me, the real question is, can I get away with not getting this lens or not? And if these don't work, if the image quality is just way better on this, then I'd get it. So that's what we're going to find out today. Let's see if I'm forgetting anything. You know, size is also I do feel like it's important to compare, because it's not just image quality, but if I can get away with a lighter kit, smaller lenses, I mean, you just look at the size difference. This one has the adapter attached. It's a significant size savings, which is not, you know, it's not insignificant or inconsequential for me, although most of the time I'm driving to my locations. I'd still prefer to be able to pack lighter if I can, travel or otherwise. But like I said, this isn't the main thing. The main thing is I'm going to try to find some photos that I can use in my body of work, and with a few hours I have. So enough yammering. Let's go find ourselves a rural paradise to photograph. First shot this morning that I've got framed up is with the 110 2.8 Mamiya Secor. So we'll take the shot first with this, and then we'll try out the GFX zoom lens. We are shooting at f11. This shot looks like an old, I don't know if it's Pioneer era, could be. If not, certainly early 1900s or turn of the century. Looks beautiful though, with the textures, the kind of collapsed addition that's on the back of it. I really love the colors. So yeah, we'll grab this shot and then we'll see if we can find some compositions elsewhere in this tiny town of Canaryville. I forgot to mention where we are. We're in Canaryville. Canaryville is known for a hike, a very beautiful hike up a canyon. These townsfolk here, it's a really tiny town. They probably don't appreciate the amount of traffic that has brought them since social media has made that hike famous. But from what I hear, it's a beautiful hike. But that's not why we're here. I'm way more interested in stuff like this. So we'll grab this shot, go from there. course, the 45 to 100 doesn't quite go to 110, but it's close enough that I think we can still get a pretty good comparison. All right. Right behind me right here is another old home. So that texture is going to give us a lot of opportunity to test out micro contrast and sharpness. So for this comparison, I'm going to use the 55 to 110 4.5 zoom lens that I have for Mamiya. So I got that really wide, but now I actually want to go really narrow with both of these. So the next one we'll do 100 millimeters on both zoom lenses. This is our cameraman today. His name is Noah. Noah, how long have you been doing videography work?
Just today, I guess.
Just today?
I've only done it today.
How do you like it? Do you think you're gonna make this your career? What are you gonna spend all your money on?
I'm gonna save it up for something.
All right, for this next shot, I'm just gonna do a quick intro of it here in the car because there are people around and I look weird enough already. As you guys know, I love taking pictures of kind of old motorhomes or old camper trailers, and I found one, and this is gonna work well for me to test one of my favorite kinds of shots. The lens that I've been using almost exclusively on my GFX 50R is the Mamiya 80mm 2.8 Secor. I love that lens. It's not too telly that it's not unusable in situations like this, where I can still kind of I don't have to get too far away to where something's not composable, but it's also telly enough to where I feel like it has the compression I like. So that's been pretty flexible. I'm excited to use that 110 millimeter lens as well, and see what that will bring to the table for Mamiya. Anyway, this shot is the type of shot I like, where it lends itself to the 65 to 24 ratio pano shot. So I'll get that shot with the 80mm, and then again, like always, on the GFX lens at 80 millimeters. We'll shoot it about f8 probably, because we don't need as much aperture for this one. Once again, we're gonna use the 80mm lens, and sorry bud, we're gonna go f4, isolate the front of that car just a little bit with both lenses. Found a little trailer. Actually, Noah saw this little trailer off into these trees. I haven't figured out the best way to frame it, whether to shoot it wide with these trees kind of framing it, if that'll be the best approach, or if we should just kind of zoom in, get really close and tight on it. I'm not sure, so I'm gonna use the GFX lens, figure out the best composition, and then based on what focal length we pick, I'll decide which of those Mamiya lenses to compare it with. Noah had a great idea. He volunteered to be the subject in some portraits. So I thought that was a good idea, since I know a lot of you guys are portrait photographers and you like using the GFX for portraiture. I don't personally. And personally, I wouldn't consider, if I was, I still wouldn't consider the Mamiya lenses. I would want to make use of that eye autofocus rather than punch in to verify focus on the eye every time. But maybe some of you are interested in that. Those of you that want GFX but you're also on a budget, then maybe this will be interesting. So we'll get some portrait shots. I'm going to shoot with all the lenses I have. Of course, I don't have any of those nice GFX portrait lenses at this time for this shoot, because that wasn't necessarily my purpose. So sorry about that, but at least you'll be able to see how those Mamiya lenses do and how that GFX zoom lens does. I'll shoot them all wide open so you can kind of see what the bokeh looks like as well, and hopefully that helps you. So I'll post those photos from all of those lenses. And then the next time we talk, we'll be back in the studio where we will take a look at what we were able to get and answer the question, can the Mamiya lenses, those more budget options, take the place of GFX lenses for those of us who don't mind shooting adapted? All right, my friends. Well, I'm now back. I had a chance also to look at those briefly. Now, I had to be careful. I haven't I have not shot in a lab with one of those charts, one of those crazy charts where you detect like sharpness and micro contrast. I'm not going to that level. I don't feel that that's necessary. But I will pixel peep a little bit. Let's compare the GF 45-100 f4 here on the left to the 80mm f2.8 Mamiya lens on the right. And zooming in here at around 300%, you can see that we have a lot more micro contrast. The colors separate more clearly. Those edges are more clearly delineated with that 80mm 2.8. I was surprised by this, and that's the case all the way to the edges. In fact, we do lose some sharpness, but the micro contrast is there. And I would say that the 80-2.8 is probably just as sharp, if not sharper. Again, you do lose some sharpness, more sharpness out of the 80 towards the edges, but that micro contrast is nice. And I was excited to see this. Really made me happy. So I thought that was interesting. And now if we look over at the portraiture side, though, we see another interesting difference here, again with the 80mm. The colors are actually a lot warmer with the GF lens than they are with the Mamiya lenses. These Mamiya lenses tend to be cooler, and I'm sure you probably noticed that as we compared them side by side earlier in the video. So here's another example of that warmth difference. Here on the left we have the GF lens again, and on the right we have the 110 Mamiya lens, and you see that cooling taking place here as well. Here again, with the zoom lenses side by side, the Mamiya zoom lens here on the right, the 55-110, you can again see that it is a cooler lens, cooler tones. That's not a deal breaker for me at all. It's very easy to adjust color, and if I wanted to warm these up, it would be a simple matter. But I do tend to like the GF lens out of camera more. What's a bigger issue with these zoom lenses as we compare them is it's pretty obvious to see that Mamiya zoom lens is very, very soft. It does not have the level of detail. So while that 80mm 2.8 Mamiya lens was impeccable, this is not. If we look at the 110 side by side with the 100, zooming in at 100 with the GF lens, here's the GF lens on the left and the Mamiya 110 on the right. If we compare these two, we see that the softness is softer. That 110 is a little softer than the GF lens, unfortunately. The zoom lens and the 110 2.8, which I had high hopes for this. This one was okay in the middle. It was almost as good sharpness-wise, but really low contrast all throughout the picture. And at the edges, pretty soft. So I was sad to see that. Like this lens, I really was hoping could be kind of the ideal lens that I use. And maybe it still is, because I don't think the difference is astronomical. If I was to print large, I would be able to tell side by side. I know I would. But would anyone else? Would most people? Probably not. Is anyone else going to care about my photos that much? Probably not. So I think it's for a difference of $6,500, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I'm okay going this route instead of this route. The zoom lens, not as impressive, and I'm not sure that I would. I mean, I might keep it just so I have the fallback of a wider angle, and the in-betweens, just if I really need the flexibility. But I think I'm okay using these two lenses for my work. And I do believe that there are other 645 lenses which, if you don't mind manual focus and some of the drawbacks we talked about, are fine as adequate substitutes. The resolving power for this sensor, it's probably going to be okay. But, big, huge but. I did not test really wide open sharpness because I don't care about that for my work. Sorry, I know a lot of you probably wish that I would have, because that is a big if, right? The sensors are thicker with the amount of filters we have these days than the film plane of yesteryear was. And that means that especially kind of the curved edges of lenses, it doesn't account for the full width of the sensor because it was a film plane, it wasn't a sensor plane. What that means is that vintage lenses are more likely to be really low quality at the edges when you're shooting at wider open focal lengths. So keep that in mind, do your own tests. If you care about shooting wide open, I wouldn't even do it. Like if wide open was a thing and I wanted sharpness wide open, I wouldn't even be looking at vintage lenses, to be honest with you. Having said that, looking at the portraitures, the portraits, I mean, again, that wasn't the purpose of the video either, but I honestly, the 110 2.8 was my favorite. It gave us but none of them had like soft bokeh. It was all the bokeh with all of these lenses was really nervous. So if that's your thing, like these are not the solution. None of this is the solution for you, I think. You'll be happier looking elsewhere. Again, that's not what I'm after though for this video, but what else can I say? I think that might be it. Am I happy with the photos? They're okay. I didn't have a ton of time and it was a very small town, and I had a limited attention span of my son. They're not the best photos that I've had and they may not be project worthy. I have to give it time and look back, but really just getting out there and being creative was meaningful, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to do it. So I think that's it. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope that you gained something from this, and if not, at least hopefully you were entertained. And if not, what are you doing here? But that's all. Remember to do good with your camera, and we'll talk to you again real soon.